Welcome to Roots Meir. My name is Micha Hyman. For those that have been with us previously, we were speaking about the subject of self-refinement as a form of relationship with Hashem, and we spoke before. That's really the essence of the entire Torah, the purpose of all the mitzvot, and really the purpose of every single individual in this world. It's the meaning of our lives. The goal of our lives is really to perfect ourselves. And the reason that is because once we do that, we become a conduit for Hashem's light into this world. We become a representative, so to speak, of Hashem in a very active way, in an essential way. We spoke about how the essence of the soul is something that's pure, it's untaintable, it's holy, irregardless of a person's actions and how they view themselves. That's what it really is. And the goal of self-refinement is to come to identify himself with that part of his soul and to express that in all of his actions, in all of his thoughts, and all of his speech. Today we're going to speak about, before we get into particular midot and to start to get into the specifics, I wanted to speak with you about a very interesting subject that's related. And it's something that is very, very much misunderstood in a large way. And it's something that's extremely fundamental to the Torah and to our self-identity, who we are. And that's the concept of nevuah, of prophecy. Prophecy is, for anyone that's seen the different movies in the 1950s in America or 60s, they were making movies about different biblical events, stories that happen, the Ten Commandments, etc. So when you see it, when you see the act of prophecy taking place, there's a voice coming down from the mountain or from the heavens. Right, it's usually in an English accent, the British accent, coming down, and it's this kind of external experience, right? And which is a very incorrect understanding of what prophecy is. But more than that, we have to understand prophecy is. Most of us understand prophecy to be just some type of mechanism to tell the future, like looking into the crystal ball, havdil. But it's really neither of those things. Prophecy is something that is an extremely internal and intimate and personal experience of connection with Hashem. It's something that's not experienced outside. It's not something that's visual. That there's a visual expression that others can pick up on. Prophecy, like we said, in connection to what we said, is really when a person makes that connection on the ultimate level. Now we have our teachings from the Rambam and from many others explain to us that in order for a person to reach prophecy, there's certain conditions that have to be in place. I'm not going to speak about all those conditions, but what we will say are two fundamental ones. One is that no matter how much a person refines himself, one individual refines himself, it's not going to necessarily bring him prophecy unless the entire nation of Israel is worthy of prophecy. And there's other conditions that the majority of the Jews have to be in the land of Israel, and different conditions like this. But the idea is once we are nationally, Am Yisrael, when we're on a spiritual level we're worthy of receiving prophecy, then every individual has the ability to reach prophecy. As a matter of fact, it says in our Midrashim that it makes no difference what age a person is, the gender of a person, male, female, whether a person, whatever kind of job he has. Right? It says that a person can attain Ruach HaKodesh. It depends on his actions. It depends on how much he refines himself. And therefore, the second fundamental is what the Rambam teaches us and others, is that the way to make yourself worthy of attaining prophecy is really through that self-improvement that we've been talking about. It's through refining every one of your midot, the way you speak, the way you act, the way you think. Right? In addition to that, also the performance of the mitzvot. And like we said in our last discussion, is that really the performance of the mitzvot and the study of Torah, the ultimate goal is for that self-perfection. So they go hand in hand, they're inseparable. A person has to be well versed in Torah, right, in order to be able to refine himself truly in the eyes of the Torah. And at the same time, he has to be truly refined to really be able to fulfill the Torah and what the Torah is really trying to achieve. And once a person has reached that level, we're talking about extremely refined people. So then there's different levels of prophecy. We're going to speak about not all of them today, but we're going to speak about a few of them. Before that, I just want to say that one more point, that the Eish Kodesh, the late Piasetzner Rebbe of Kolonimus Kalman Shapira Zatzal, who is known as the Warsaw Ghetto Rebbe. So he wrote about this subject extensively, and he wrote about it in a very unique way, which is kind of what we're speaking about now. Our ideas are really based on a lot of his ideas today. That he says that the essence of a Jewish soul is that of a prophet. He bases this on a Gemara. It says in the Talmud a very interesting story, that there was a discussion in the main Sanhedrin, in the main rabbinical court in Jerusalem, in ancient times, in the times when the temple stood in Jerusalem. There was a question of, there was one particular halacha, there was a law that they were unclear about. In other words, they didn't really have the direct transmission, it had been forgotten. So they called in Hillel Hazak, and Hillel the elder, famous Hillel that we all hear about. And Hillel said, I also don't remember. He said, but you know what, let's wait and let's see what everybody's going to do. Let's see what all the masses of people are going to do, he said. And he said his reasoning for this was that if they're not prophets themselves, because this was already in the time where one level of prophecy had been removed from us, we didn't have it anymore. So if they're not prophets themselves, b'nei nevi'im him, they're the children of prophets. So the Piasetzner Rebbe, he dissects this teaching in the Gemara, and he says, what does it mean that they're the children of prophets? Just because their fathers attained a certain level, does that mean that they're also going to achieve that level? So he says, no, that's not what it means. He says that B'nai Nevi'im doesn't mean that they're the children of Nevi'im, of prophets. It means that their essence is that of prophecy. The essence of the Jewish soul is that of prophecy. And what does that mean? That ultimately what prophecy is once a person's refined themselves so much, it's like a pipeline without any blocks, any stops, any stoppage in there, and that the water can flow absolutely without any impediment. So too the soul becomes that kli, becomes that vessel, becomes that conduit that Hashem's light can come straight through. And therefore, the experience of prophecy is one of intense relationship, intense closeness and unity with Hashem. And not only is it just an abstract feeling of unity, of oneness, but sometimes it can come with a particular message. Now, most of the prophecies that were ever received, and in our history, the Gemara teaches us that we had millions of prophets. In the ancient times, we didn't even have doctors. If a person had some type of illness or something went wrong, so he went to the prophet, and the prophet told him what to do, and the prophet told him what was wrong. So that the most of the prophecies that were received were personal prophecies. It was a personal interaction, a personal relationship between you and Hashem. And like we said, everybody could reach it. A child, male, female, didn't make a difference, right? And once a person reached that, so he had this constant back and forth with Hashem in regards to his own life. And Hashem would send him messages and send him advice and send him. Now, once a person attained a certain level that was even higher than that, so then sometimes he would get messages for others. And sometimes he would get messages for the entire nation. And beyond that, he would sometimes get a message not even just for the entire nation in his generation, but for all future generations. And those are the prophecies that we have written down in the books of the prophets today, which is an amazing thing. People that lived 3,000 years ago, that they were 2,500, 3,000 years ago, and we saved not just for posterity so we could have these nice poetic writings. We don't read them as poetry or as history, but we read them as applicable to our lives, because they were receiving through them making themselves a total conduit of the God's light. They were receiving messages, they were receiving advice and light for us in our generation, even today. Now, therefore, the experience was so personal and intimate that we have a very interesting story that was written about one of our great prophets, Shmuel. The prophet Shmuel, when it's a whole story, a very interesting story, how he came into this world, how he was born, and ended up at a very young age living with Eli Cohen, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest in Israel at the time, and he helped him and he studied under him. Now, and he was on a process of self-perfection, and he received his first prophecy late at night one night. And with the way that it's described in the prophet is that Hashem said to him, Shmuel, Shmuel. He called to him twice. And so he thought that he was hearing the voice of Eli. And so he went to Eli and he said, "Did you call me? My master, did you call me?" He said, "No, I didn't call you. Go back to sleep." So again, Hashem called to him, "Shmuel, Shmuel." And he again went to Eli. And he said, "No, I didn't call you." Third time. He said, "Tell me exactly what it sounded like." Right? So he explained to him the experience, what it was. Right? Now this sounds similar to the movies, like we said, a voice comes out of heaven. We're going to see in a minute, it's not like that. So Eli explained to him, he said, it's not me calling you, it sounds like me. Because like the tzaddikim teach, the first time a person receives prophecy, he experiences it in the same way that he experiences hearing his father's voice. Why is that? Because his father is his source, right? And that's the warm caretaker for him in his life, his father. So he experiences it as his father's voice. It's not audible. It's not something that he hears. It's not something that anybody else can hear. But the experience is so real and so tangible that it's as if he's hearing a voice. It's clear as day. It's as clear as a voice, and that's why it comes. It's a lot of times it's spoken about as a voice, right? And that's why it's unfortunately misconstrued by Hollywood to be a real voice coming out of heaven in actual words. So the concept therefore is that once a person has refined himself to this level, so the prophecy comes down as a very intimate and personal experience of godliness and of connection. Now there's three different levels. There's many different forms of prophecy. We're going to speak just about three basic levels, the most discussed levels. The first one is Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is the level of prophecy where it's not necessary, he feels that he's plugged in, he feels that he's connected to Hashem, but it's not necessarily that he receives a message that's clear as day. In other words, it's not as clear as a voice. He doesn't hear or experience it as if it could have been a voice telling him exactly what to do. But he has this overwhelming intuition. This is what we have passed down. The person has an overwhelming intuition one way or the other. In other words, he finds himself in a situation he's not sure what to do, or he's giving advice to somebody else, and he has an overwhelming intuition that he knows is coming from a place deep inside of him, not just his own mind. That's the first level. That's Ruach HaKodesh. The second level is Bat Kol. Bat Kol, which literally means the daughter of a voice, which is very interesting. It's discussed why it's called the daughter of a voice, not a voice. Now this is a form of prophecy that was unique in the sense that it occurred in a public setting. It also occurred in a private setting, but most of the stories that we have passed down are stories that occurred in a public setting. What is that Bat Kol? Does it mean that there was literally a voice? It sounds like there was a voice. But Chazal are very careful. They didn't call it Kol, they called it a Bat Kol. Not a voice, but a daughter of a voice. So what does it mean, a daughter of a voice? Similar to what we were saying before, which is that it's not a voice. It's not literally a voice, but it's so clear that it might as well have been a voice. In other words, there was a prophetic experience. There was this internal experience that all of them had individually, but they had it at the same time together. Right? Hashem, so to speak, he hit them up all at the same time together, and they all experienced it. Now, it's that experience, since it happens in a public setting most of the time. So what it was is that it was so tangible that it was almost as if they heard a voice, right? In other words, how can 5 people, 10 people in a room have the same exact experience simultaneously, to receive a message simultaneously? Only if it's audible. Only if someone says something to the entire group, right? So that's why they called it a bat kol. It was like a voice. It was like the shadow of a voice, that they heard it, and they were 100% sure what they heard, but it wasn't like something that you could put your finger on, that there was an actual voice in the room. That was the second level, bat kol. The third level is nevuah. Nevuah, like we said, in general prophecy, this was a much more intense experience. This is the level that we were speaking about before, that really the whole nation has to be on the level of being worthy to achieve this, any individual. And they used to have schools. Our sages teach us that they used to have schools in Jerusalem and Israel on how to train a person to refine himself, to perfect himself, to really be able to attain prophecy. Today we don't have those schools because as a nation we haven't yet returned to being on a spiritual level where we're worthy of receiving prophecy. And to a large degree, we've lost the Masar, the tradition of how to, in exactly which ways to perfect ourselves, in which ways to be able to interpret if a person is starting to receive prophecy or not. And this is something that we have passed down that is going to return with the final redemption. But in any event, this level of prophecy called nevuah means that a person had such an intense experience that his entire soul was filled with godliness, a godly connection, a godly hashpa'ah, influence. All of the prophets that received this level of prophecy, their body went into a state of not being able to function. A lot of times it looked like even almost like an epileptic seizure, that a person would shake, that his body ceased to function in a normal way because his soul was being, I don't want to say entranced, but his soul was having this experience that was so intense that the body couldn't possibly be functioning in a physical way. And these are all things that are explained at length in all of our holy writings. But in any event, that level of nevuah, that's the level of nevuah that we were talking about, that a person can receive messages, absolutely clear messages and images for himself and for others and for all of Am Yisrael and for all the future generations. So these three levels of prophecy are really, the PSS the Rebbe explains, really the goal. In other words, we're serving Hashem no matter what the way we view the Torah is, whether or not we achieve these levels or we don't achieve these levels, we still are going to try. We're going to still try to keep the Torah as best as we can and to fulfill the Torah and to make a connection with Hashem on whatever level connection we can feel and we can experience. But essentially, the goal of this connection that we've been speaking about and this need for the soul to connect to Hashem is absolutely this, is that to reconnect, to reunite with his absolute source, the source of holiness, and to connect on that level of spirituality, which is totally undeniable, in a sense that there's absolute unity between him and Hashem, even while he's in this physical world. And the experience that is called prophecy. So we don't have this level of nevuah, the highest level that we spoke about today. In Bat Kol, the daughter of the voice, we also don't have that level today. It's been missing for quite a number of years now. But something that we do have today is Ruach HaKodesh. And many of the tzaddikim talk about that everybody has the ability today, even in this generation, to be able to reach, to achieve this level of Ruach HaKodesh. Right? And it's a very high level of self-refinement. And it goes part and parcel with what we've been speaking about, which we're going to continue to speak about, which is that of self-refinement, of all of his midot, his character traits, and his speech, and his actions. That, in a nutshell, is an introduction to prophecy. What prophecy is, what the role of prophecy is. It's not, again, some type of external experience, some type of somebody else speaking to you. It's something that comes from within. He feels that Hashem, he's connecting to Hashem from within, not from outside of himself. Right? And therefore, in this generation, it's not so easy to be able to hear and to be able to be in touch with these internal spiritual experiences. There's so much distraction, so much noise, so many things that are distracting us from having just a quiet moment to be able to attain that. Like the tzaddikim explained, that really to be able to achieve this level, a person had to have a lot of moments of quietude in his life, right? And the reason why that is because it's not something that you can't have that focus, that inner focus and experience if there's so much external stimulus going on. Therefore, we should all just know, even if we are not all experiencing prophecy ourselves, we should know what the role of prophecy is, how fundamental it is to the Torah, how fundamental it is to who we are. Like that we said from the PSS and Rebbe, that's the essence of who we are, and really that's the goal of who we are, is to try to achieve that relationship. And at the very least, we can start on our path together in the beginning by trying to perfect ourselves and to refine ourselves and to identify ourselves with that holy part inside of ourselves. Have a great day.